Now we're going to be crossing live to the Birchwood Hotel in Boksburg in Ekurhuleni, where the African Leadership Forum will be getting underway shortly this morning. The forum is an annual event aimed at giving former African heads of state a platform to debate matters concerning the African continent. Well, we cross now to our colleague Thulasizwe Simelane. Thulasizwe, a very good morning indeed. African leaders coming together to debate a lot about current challenges that the continent is facing. I know you've got two illustrious guests with you there this morning.
Yes, then absolutely illustrious is the word, and you wish you were sitting where I'm sitting right now, about to engage two former presidents on the continent of Africa about pertinent issues that the continent continues to grapple with, and the role that former presidents can play in contributing to resolution of some of those issues that continue to face the continent. I'm joined by former President Thabo Mbeki and former President of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And of course, we are meeting here because of the African Leadership Forum, which is being hosted in South Africa for the first time. But you've been hosting this for a while, President Mkapa, and I think it makes sense for me to start with you and ask you, what is the big idea behind this African Leadership Forum?
The forum is designed to bring together former leaders of African states together with people of influence in academia, in economics, and in social development, leaders of institutes and centers of learning, in order to exchange views about a current or an imminent problem arising on the continent, which can stultify the process of development and integration in Africa. So we started with African integration because we want to reassert our Africanness. We proceeded to deal with economic development, business, and three, we are trended particularly African business, how it can be advanced and how it can be further advanced by accelerated economic integration or regional integration. But this time we said, look, we are bedeviled, if I may use that phrase, yes, with the problem of political stability and sometimes real uprisings in many African countries. And so let us address this issue as former leaders, but also as people of learning, why these issues arise, how we can tackle them, and what is the way forward. And that is why we have picked this problem.
President Mbeki, what makes this the right fit for you in the kind of work that you do as the Thabo Mbeki Foundation and also in contributing to African leadership development?
Well, let me first of all say that, and as you were saying, indeed, this is not the first of the African Leadership Forums, but President Mkapa has been convening the African Leadership Forum, and is convening even this one. But he did raise a matter with me that the previous sessions have taken place in Dar es Salaam, but this is an African Leadership Forum. And his own view was that it can also be held somewhere else outside of Dar es Salaam, outside of Tanzania, and so we said can we come here? And of course I readily agreed to this. And that's how we end up as co-hosts. But it doesn't change the character of the African Leadership Forum. It is convened by President Mkapa, but we're co-hosting because we are here. Sure. But he was raising this matter about peace and security, raising a very important, urgent matter which is with us to this day. You see all of these conflicts taking place in Africa, whether you're talking Somalia or South Sudan or the Congo or the Sahel, Mali, and so on. It's a real problem. We need to, even as the AU says, that we must silence the guns by 2020. It's a good ambition, it's a good wish, but the African Leadership Forum gives us a possibility to look not at wishes, but more practically as what is it that we do in order to address a matter which is a real challenge. which impacts, I'm saying, just killing Africans, instability of societies, reducing possibilities for development, for integration, and all of this. So hopefully this is what will happen over the next 2 days.
So some people watching will say, well, you face one big problem, the question of agency and influence and power, because you're no longer in office. How much of a receptive ear have you found, President Mkapa, in the time that you've done this kind of convening of this forum, in terms of the issues that you raise, then being taken up by those who actually can do something about it?
Well, we hope they are studying the observations or the findings of these forums that we have held, because we do produce the documentation and a summary of the views that are presented. But additionally, I hope they are inspired to seek more direct contact with former leaders. This is a real problem in Africa, because the tendency is that former leaders of Africa are used much more by by leaders outside the continent, in America, in Europe, to seek their views, to seek their representation, and so on. Then they are used by their own fellow leaders, current leaders in Africa. So I hope that they go through the recommendations that we make. But it's impossible for us to be totally ignored.
President Mbeki, is it your sense that there's a regression in terms of the democratization of African countries, the trend towards more democratization and the opening up of space for opposition to be able to actively participate in politics without leading to conflict? I know you just came back from leading the mission, the observer mission in Kenya.
Well, I would be very, very reluctant to make a generalization like that, just kind of to summarize an African trend, because I think it would be difficult to do that. And I don't think it would be possible to come to a conclusion that looking at the continent as a whole, there's a regression. You might make that observation with regard to specific countries. But I think that, what you have seen, elections took place in Tanzania. President Magufuli got elected as president and so on. Whatever else happened, there hasn't been any attempt there to suppress the opposition. For instance, I know for a fact that there was, in terms of the governing party, there was quite a lot of concern as to what was going to happen with regard to those elections, because even some of the leaders from the CCM, the governing party, broke away. But there was no attempt to arrest them or lock them up or do anything of this kind. So I'm saying that you don't have any example of regression.
I guess what I'm asking you, President Mbeki, is perhaps specific examples that include countries such as what we saw happening in Burundi over the past 2 years, and also the situation we are seeing with a country like the DRC, where you have a president who effectively currently doesn't have an electoral mandate but remains in office. And you did a lot of work during your tenure towards the resolution of the conflict that had plagued the DRC, and countries such as Rwanda, where we're seeing a kind of third termism, where the constitution is then amended to make sure that the president who's always been there continues in office.
Yes, certainly. This comes back to the point I was making, that indeed, if we, rather than make general statements of the continent, to look at specific cases as you have done. Indeed, sure. The situation in the Congo, in the DRC, is very worrying. And indeed, there had been an agreement, as you know, among the Congolese in December, this last December, that they would hold the elections sometime this year. They lengthened the stay in position of President Kabila for a year, during which year elections would take place. But I noticed just now, there was one of the resolutions that came out of the SADC summit, which was just held a few days ago, that they actually say, they take note of the fact that it will not be possible for elections to take place in the Congo as planned. I don't know what has happened with regard to that, and said that the Electoral Commission of the DRC must give a date. That's negative. That's negative. Something has gone wrong with regard to that. And I hope something will be done by the region, by the continent, to address that issue, because as you've seen, part of what's happened in the Congo as a result of this, a lot of people have died. For instance, in the Kasai provinces, because of this political thing, and more people may very well die if this matter is not resolved.
Right.
So I'm saying that both the region, SADC, and the continent as a whole, through the AU, should act on that. Right. You know, President Mkapa is a facilitator in Burundi. The reason he did that is because it was necessary to make an intervention of that kind in Burundi to help, in the end, for the Burundi to have normal elections and so on.
Right, President Mbeki, let's hold it there for a moment. We're coming back after this short break, and we continue this conversation with former President Thabo Mbeki and former President of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa.
Every morning can be a challenge, but as the day goes on, you can be there to send hope and joy to your loved ones for a better future. And at the end of the day, your faith is even stronger when you see their lives improving. That's the African way. MoneyGram, bringing you closer.
It's a woman. I don't know her name now.
Yo, what is this woman's name?
Shabalala something.
Speaker. Hey.
I know, but I forgot the name. The speaker.
It's a lady.
I don't know.
Anyway, this Madam Speaker. This is Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I don't know.
That lady that says honorable what?
That lady from ANC. She got a short hair. I don't know her name.
He's dark, is he not?
She's closer from the Eastern Cape.
But no.
I think Tulima Tonsela is the name.
I can't remember her name, but I know her.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Still don't know?
I don't know. Naledi something, I don't know.
Welcome back. You're watching ENCA. We're in conversation with former President Thabo Mbeki and former President of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa, as they convene the African Leadership Forum here in Boksburg. President Mkapa, let's talk a bit about the situation where you are in East Africa. What is your sense there in terms of the peace and stability situation? You are a region, of course, that faces challenges from the area of Somalia and the issue of militants that are active in that area. So when you see situations that sort of threaten what had been a stable situation, for instance, in Burundi, surely that must concern you, certainly if you consider how it then all feeds together.
I must say that there is at the outset a recognition that there is a stability problem. Somalia, obviously, Sudan, South Sudan, DRC, as you said, and Burundi, where I'm involved in facilitating an inclusive resolution of the third term issue there. Fortunately, in my own country, there isn't very much trouble. But we are members of the East African community. And so there is a recognition that there is a problem, hence the facilitation work that has been given to me with regard to Burundi. But there hasn't been any pronouncement on the DRC, which I think is wrong. Not enough is being done, I believe, in order to bring the views to bear upon the crisis in South Sudan and Somalia. And so it all boils down to leadership and the readiness to take measures to help the situation evolve equitably. If you let the situation drift along, you are going to wind up with with really, as the president was saying, killings, disappearances, and whatnot. So we need a little more courage on the part of the leaders to do so. You see, one of the problems, I believe, where stability is threatened, or where peace is threatened, is that you have a leadership which does not recognize that for new states, for young states like ours, nation building, patriotism is at any time, at any election, at any political party gathering, is a work in progress. A work in progress. It's never concluded. And for that you need to enlarge the participation of political parties, of citizens, and so on. But if you have a leadership that thinks that things will be all right because I am me, myself, no, we won't make progress.
So let me ask you something specific, President Mkapa. What is it that makes some African leaders feel that no one else can run the state, affairs of the state, other than themselves? Therefore leading to what, at the AU summit was termed a new kind of coup d'etat by virtue of third termism, seeking a third term, going to the lengths of amending constitutions. You are retired, and Tanzania continues to run.
Yeah, that's why I said it depends upon leadership. If you have a leader who thinks that the progress of the country or change can only be undertaken by I, me, and myself, you are going to run into trouble. And that's what happens. No consultations, no reviews. My brother here started the African peer review mechanism. You send teams to these countries, they look at you, they give you very frank advice, and you do nothing because you believe that everything will be all right as long as I, me, and myself. No, that will not move us forward.
President Mbeki, let's relate this to matters sort of closer to home for you and I. The question of poverty, to what extent does it impact on issues of peace and stability? We saw the Stats South Africa come out with a report that says the majority of South Africans continue to live in poverty. To what extent does that contribute to the kind of agitation in society that we see from time to time, the kind of unease and unhappiness that you see in South Africa?
It's one of the important factors with regard to that issue of stability. In many cases, what you see happen to us is that you have a ruling group which accesses political power by one means or the other and monopolizes the political power, monopolizes the economic resources, ensures maldistribution because we, this elite, are accumulating to ourselves whatever wealth is generated, marginalizing the rest of the population, hence the poverty. In a situation like that, it's inevitable that sooner or later there will be conflict, because you can't say a country is defined like that there's a small elite at the top which has got all the power, political, economic, and everything else, and the rest are in poverty. It's a problem. It's a problem in South Africa. It's a problem in other countries on our continent. And it is one of the critical factors in terms of causing instability and conflict.
How much do policy failures, particularly in the instance of South Africa, account for that problem continuing in fact, the picture seems to be a kind of regression, that more and more people are now living in poverty?
Yes, I wish it was, if it was merely a matter of policy failures, that would be very hopeful. Because you can then look at, we say, like, we set up this policy hoping to achieve this, it hasn't worked. Therefore, let's do something else. The problem is a problem that President Mkapa was raising, was the question of the quality of leadership. The question of the quality of leadership. So, if you have a leadership which in reality, in practice, is not interested practically in the upliftment of the masses of the people, these policy reviews will not take place. If it was a failure of policy only, I'm saying it would be a good thing. Because we would say, okay, this policy hasn't worked, let's change it in order to produce a result, because this one hasn't. But I'm saying where you have this problem of a leadership that is self-centered, that's concerned about itself, perpetuating itself in power, accumulating all the wealth and so on, then it's not a policy issue, it's a leadership issue that President Mkapa was raising.
President Mkapa, the president of Angola, José Eduardo dos Santos, is leaving office after about 37 years. What do you say about countries like that, Angola, Zimbabwe, where there's a sense that the president or the leadership has not been renewed? Your party is always cited, Chama Cha Mapinduzi, is always cited as an example of a leadership renewal. What is it that you do in Tanzania that produces a Jakaya Kikwete, who is one of the people who will be speaking here, former President Jakaya Kikwete, whereas other countries such as Angola, it takes them 37 years to actually have a leadership change?
I can only refer to the legacy that our founding president gave us. He was president for 23 years. And at the Congress towards the end, there was great pressure for him to continue. You are the father of the nation, no one else can do this, etc., etc. Eventually, he had to tell them. He said, listen, this country will have to go on even when I am not here. And so you start preparing for that period. So let us discuss about who my successor shall be, what kind of qualities. And then he said, after we have agreed on that, let us agree that one of the conditions of stability is that others who are aspiring to the same position will know that they still have a chance, and hence the factor of limitation of terms, 2 terms. When that was agreed, all and sundry. From then onwards, he passed on to Mzee Mwinyi at the end of the 10 years, although there was some grumbling, say no, he should continue. He said, no, we must respect the Constitution. And then I followed in. At once, towards the end of my term, they were also said, you are doing such a good job. You must go on. I said, no, the Constitution must be respected. And similarly with President Kikwete. So it all goes back to the legacy and the lesson that Mwalimu gave us. The country goes on even when you are no longer leader.
President Mbeki, let me be mischievous then and say, don't you just wish the state he just described was the state of your organization, the African National Congress, and then ask you about, as you are seeing the various people that are coming forward, potentially to lead the ANC, what is your thinking?
Well, I don't want to get involved in this political discussion about leadership things in the ANC, but to say that, there's an important initiative, as you know, which was taken by these veterans and stalwarts of the ANC, who sought to engage the National Executive Committee of the ANC to say there are problems in the ANC. We, these veterans and stalwarts, think there are problems, and here they are. Why don't we get together and, as you know, as you'll recall, they suggested that there should be convened a National Consultative Conference. I thought that was a very healthy intervention. I think the ANC must still go back to that, because I think that self-examination is very important. And the intervention of these veterans, political and military, the intervention of those veterans in this discussion. I'm saying these veterans and stalwarts, the MK Council, interacting with the current leadership of the ANC, which was elected at conference. I think that's the way the ANC should go.
Right. Presidents, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and coming and engaging with us here about these very important issues. And the time we had can never be enough for the kind of conversations that we are having. And that's where we leave it, Dan, with the 2 presidents, former President Thabo Mbeki and former President Benjamin Mkapa. The African Leadership Forum is a 2-day meeting. It starts today and continues on to tomorrow. And among the people that will be there, that will be participating, people such as former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, and as I've said, former President of Tanzania, Jakaya Kikwete, and of course the 2 presidents that I was engaging with, and leaders from Somalia, former leaders from Somalia and Tunisia, also among the people that will be part of this discussion.